SCORE Northeast Wisconsin and WHBY are pleased to bring you Biztalk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences. From starting to sustaining growth, learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you miss anything, you can catch the Biztalk podcast at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's Biztalk on WHBY.
Good morning and welcome to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY. I'm Rick Sense, and along with me today is my mentor in SCORE. Always fun to have Keith on. Keith Keller is the guy that kind of helped show me the ropes when I started with SCORE. So, Keith, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Rick.
Nice to have you. Well, this week we were joined by Bethany Skorik, an etiquette and communications expert and founder of Ascent Etiquette and Communications, which is a consultancy that blends modern etiquette, executive presence, and strategic communications to help clients present themselves with confidence and purpose. With a background spanning corporate communications, public affairs, and a high-profile protocol, plus multiple etiquette and protocol certifications, Bethany equips individuals and organizations to make a polished, lasting impression. Welcome to the show, Bethany.
Hi, Rick. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And we're excited Keith and I are excited to talk to you about this topic. It's a very interesting one. I think it's kind of one of those lost arts, actually, that we've seen in my lifetime. I've seen a decrease of etiquette and protocol and things like that in business. And maybe instead of starting down the path of talking about the business, let's talk about what the business is first. Would you mind to share with listeners what Ascent actually does?
Yes. So Ascent Etiquette and Communications is a small business. I combine my background in etiquette, protocol, and public affairs to help my clients really take a 360 approach to everything that they're putting out into the public about their company, but also how leaders and the individual employees are carrying themselves. It's a brand reputation building from the inside out.
So what is your mission then of the organization?
My mission, well, I have a few. So I have an overall mission and I have some personal motivators, but my mission is to help people combine refinement plus strong communication to equal influence, because a really good communications message will be dropped if it's not presented in the right way, or if it's not presented by someone that is trustworthy and comes across as stable. So really taking, like I said, that 360 approach to how you're conducting yourself in the office, out in public, and then helping with communications, writing and delivering them, so your audience is really understanding the message that you're intending.
Now, I've had the good fortune, I should say, of knowing you probably since like 2010, I think.
We go way back, Rick.
Yes, we do. Yes. And for listeners, just so you know, Bethany is joining us from Marinette this morning. Bethany, can you maybe give listeners a little bit of an idea of that this isn't your primary gig at the moment? It's kind of a, what do they call, a hack, is I think the term that people use today. Can you maybe give listeners a little bit of your current background outside of the hack, what you're doing, and what kind of prepared you to do what you're doing with Ascent?
Yes. So in my corporate job, I am the Director of Strategic Communications and Public Affairs for a manufacturer and defense contractor here in northern Wisconsin. I've been with the company for 15 years. And I really grew the communications and public affairs department from the ground up. When I joined the company, it had just been acquired by a global parent. And I really went through the transformation of working for a mom and pop company to going through branding, communication styles, going from working with local media to national and international media. And because we're a global company, we're often welcoming in either global colleagues, owners, or a lot of partners and customers. So I have just seen so much in my 15, almost a little bit more than 15 years of working in this industry. And I can personally say that my background in etiquette and protocol, and I can talk about that a little bit later, but I know that doors opened for me because I knew how to carry myself. I started with the company at 23 years old, and I soon found myself being invited into the boardroom for meetings or into the CEO's office in an inner circle because I could properly express my ideas. I knew how to give feedback in a way that disarmed our leaders, and they kind of leaned on me for that. And so when I was thinking about starting a passion project or a hobby, I really realized that I love everything etiquette and protocol, and I wanted to find a way that I could do it in my spare time because I enjoy it, but I could also help people realize the power of being able to present yourself and speak, public speaking, but also just one-on-one speaking. And from that idea is how I got to where I am today with Ascent. It's still my side gig, my passion, but it's quickly growing.
And looking back in that time that you started from thinking through the process, hey, I might want to start this, to where you are now, what has been the biggest lesson that you've learned so far?
My biggest lesson that I've learned so far is not to niche down so narrowly that you back yourself into a corner. I've done a lot of research on side gigs and turning your expertise into coaching, and all of these internet gurus were telling you to niche down, find your niche. And so I did that, and I niched down too far initially. I decided I love etiquette and I wanted it to be really fun. So I first started with doing etiquette lessons for children and really women's groups. And it was really focused on the lifestyle aspect of it. And it was fun. But after I started doing those classes, I had businesses begin to reach out to me and ask if I could start to tailor programs for them in the corporate world. And I should have anticipated that because I myself use it every day in corporate. But I think I imagine that a lot of businesses maybe had someone on site that was doing that, and it was kind of a blinder for me. So because I niched down so much, I really had to redo my entire business plan, which is a really good problem to have, that my business was growing. But that's the first thing that I would say as my major lesson learned is don't niche down too much that it requires you to really redo your business plan if more opportunities are presented to you.
Well, Bethany, where did this passion for protocol and etiquette, where did that come from? I mean, you talked about being good at it, and it opened doors for you and gave you a lot of opportunities, even to this day. Where do you think that original passion for that came from?
Well, I know exactly where it came from. When I was growing up, I have a wonderful aunt. She lives in Ohio, and she owned an etiquette business and a tea house. So anytime I would get together with her, we were always putting on tea parties or practicing formal table settings. She was giving me the notes from the newest classes that she was giving, and I ate it up. I just loved it. And that really sparked this interest in me to kind of look at the softer side of things and really focus on soft skills in the arts. So growing up, I think I read every book on etiquette, and I just really appreciated having that formality and those guidelines to help you in difficult situations. And then I got to college. I went to St. Norbert College and I got a dual degree in international relations and political science. And I took a lot of classes that focused on diplomacy. And as I'm reading about diplomacy and how politicians and ambassadors are working together, I'm seeing these things that I once called etiquette really going from the lifestyle application into business and global politics. So it made me even more interested in that. And then I started my career with a defense contractor. And every day I was working with elected officials. I've worked with prime ministers, the president and the vice president of the United States. So my employer had sent me to a pretty prestigious protocol school when I first started. So throughout all of these years, I found myself certified in etiquette lifestyle. I did that on my own for my own enjoyment. I've been to several really well-known etiquette houses and been certified as an instructor. And then I went into corporate and I got certified for protocol that way. And I think I kind of, not that I needed to legitimize it in my head, but it made me realize, okay, I'm not crazy. This is something that can be used on a daily basis and should be used on a daily basis. So it's a very long time coming to get here.
Fascinating.
Bethany, there's so much to talk about, and we always run into this problem on the show. We never have enough time. We always have more questions than we get to. But one I'd like to make sure that we get in is, what did you do right to grow your business from a small etiquette business into a PR business that you're doing now?
Yeah, so I said on one hand, a lesson learned is niching down. However, if I take a step back, really this organic growth that I've experienced is exactly how I needed to do it for my business, because I do have my corporate job. We say 9 to 5, but we all know it's more like 7 to 7. And if I would have told myself, hey, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do lifestyle etiquette and corporate protocol and etiquette and then start ghostwriting and communications, I think I would have been too intimidated to go forward. So growing in steps after I really mastered how to do lifestyle etiquette coaching, and then one of my clients that was in one of my sessions, also a businesswoman, said, hey, could you tailor this for my business? And so I said, yes. And I took that on very slowly. And so I tailored something for her business. And then I realized that it was applicable for others. And so it grew very slowly and intentionally in that regard. And then I was giving a public speaking presentation. And one of the leaders of the organization stayed in my presentation. I thought it was to make sure that they were getting like the bang for their buck or something. And after the presentation, he asked me, he thinks that he's presenting in all the right ways, but his speeches aren't really landing. And I said, would you mind if I looked at your speech? And he said, of course. So he sent it to me, and then my communications background just got really excited because I saw some really key things that he could change in his speech. So for him, it really wasn't the presentation. It was that his messaging was getting lost in the speech. So then I slowly started ghostwriting or starting to help with the the communications consulting piece. So for me, it grew very gradually and almost in a bespoke way that I started to tailor things for specific clients. And so I wasn't making a grand one-size-fits-all presentation. It was small pieces that I knew that were going to get used.
All right. I think this is a great time to take our first break. You're listening to a very interesting program this morning with Bethany Skorik from Ascent Etiquette and Communications, and we will be right back after this message. Welcome back to Biztalk with Score on WHBY. I'm Rick Sense, along with co-host Keith Keller. And today we're having a great conversation with Bethany Skorik, who is the president, CEO, and founder of Ascent Etiquette and Communications. And Bethany, we would love to get right back into the conversation, but before we do that, I'm just going to take a minute to talk about SCORE in Northeast Wisconsin. We serve an 18-county area, and plus the county of Menominee in Michigan. We have over 50 volunteers, each an expert in their field, offering entrepreneurs no-cost and confidential mentoring. Those areas of expertise include IT, social media, marketing, cash flow, accounting, strategic planning, workflow, HR, retail, best practices, and many, many others. In order to register for a no-cost confidential mentoring session and or to learn more about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. You can learn more about how the SCORE chapter can assist you with starting and or growing your business, and you can complete an application for a mentoring session. Simply complete the online form and submit it to SCORE. Within a few days, a SCORE mentor will be contacting you to set up a meeting. And remember, SCORE is no cost and offers experts who can offer you assistance in many different areas. To get started, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And to support small business people, SCORE Northeast Wisconsin is always looking for new mentors. If you have experience that you would like to share with others, we'd love to talk to you. We welcome volunteers with experience in all aspects of business. Small business owners need your help, and your experience can make a real difference to their success. Go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, click on the volunteer button, and fill out the short application, and we'll get back to you to explain more. So, Keith, I'm going to turn the show back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Bethany, when looking over your website, I see a lot of references to personal branding. And I think for those of us who are in the marketing world, we think of branding, we think of it at the corporate level. We may think of logos and trademarks like the Nike swoosh or the Apple computers, Apple with the bite out of it, or the three-pointed star from Mercedes-Benz. But those are logos, trademarks, intellectual property, corporate identity elements that we sometimes, attribute to brands and branding. And that's true, but it's really kind of the tip of the iceberg. So branding obviously being a much bigger thing than that. But you talk about personal branding in the services you offer. Can you talk a little bit about the difference and the similarities between corporate brands, corporate branding, and personal branding?
I love this question. So a personal brand can really be summarized by saying it's your reputation. It's what people think about you when they speak to you. It's what they're saying about you when you're not in the room. And it takes a long time to build up your reputation into a positive reputation, and it can take seconds or minutes to ruin your reputation. So it's very important as leaders, but also just as individuals, to be aware of what your personal brand is. And when I'm working with leaders, I want to make sure that they are not kind of switching their masks, because that really confuses people. If you are acting one way out in public, but then you get back into the office and you're acting a different way in meetings, and then you show up in front of your employees and you're acting with a different personality, it's very confusing to people. So your personal brand is really that 360 idea that people have of you. And it is somewhat similar to a corporate brand, because when you think of a logo for a business, you see it and it's that business, the swoosh, it's Nike. The same for a leader. Usually people have like 3 words that they think of when a person comes to mind. And so you want to start acting and conducting yourself in a way that builds on what 3 words you hope people are thinking about you. It might be stability, competence, intelligence, empathy. You decide what that is, and then you should be acting like that in all these different avenues to support that.
And a brand really being what others perceive you to be, right? The same as a company, what they assign to your business, or in this case, to you as an individual.
Yes, and when you're building that, like I said, it can take time, but there are some things that you can do to really build it faster. So if someone decides, hey, I'm smart enough to be a thought leader in my industry or in my community, how do I start working on my personal brand? I help people do that. And one of the things that I think is really important right now, if you're trying to grow your reputation in industry, is LinkedIn. And it's very easy to become, not easy to become a thought leader, but it's easy to start building that for yourself and building that personal brand. So getting on a cadence of what you're doing in social media, starting to work with the media, making sure that you have those 3 or 4 pillars in everything that you're writing or in every interview that you're putting out that comes back to your core message.
You talked a little bit earlier about a leader who came to you with a speech that just wasn't landing, right? And you reviewed the speech and helped them, communicate better, get across the ideas that they wanted to get across. I'm fascinated about the folks at the very top of organizations, the C-suite people, the owners, the presidents, the founders of businesses, and working with them, and even being able to attract them to think that you've got services that can help them. I can imagine some of those folks saying, "Hey, Bob down in marketing, he needs some help." And
Right.
Let's get him.
It's always Bob, not me.
Yeah, but not me. I'm the guy that has all the answers, right? So I'm just fascinated. In that particular case that you described, it was somebody that saw they had a problem, right? They were aware of that. I'm sure it would be people that are particularly more aware of their situations that might be open to those kind of services. But how do you kind of break that wall down for those people at the very top that might not feel like they need that help?
I feel like I could give an entire segment on that, but a few answers that I have is, first of all, I think that every company should have a standard that up to their CEO level is receiving some type of professional development, because by the time people get to the level that they're a CEO or an executive, a lot of them have blinders on and they think, I've made it this far, I don't need someone critiquing me. And what I want them to know is you might have made it this far almost despite some of your drawbacks or weaknesses. Imagine if you had someone working with you on perfecting the way that you're giving a speech or writing a speech, or how you're even interacting with employees through internal communications. And so I would tell that to leaders that very rarely is there a leader that's perfect at everything. And it doesn't mean that you have a huge gap, but we can always refine and get better. I think that my position, sometimes calling in a third party like myself, is the way to go if you have a leader that maybe doesn't have a trusted chief of staff or a trusted public affairs person that they feel comfortable getting honest feedback from. And that's not the leader's fault, because it takes the right type of person to be able to close the door and say, hey, boss, I might be out of my lane, but I have some feedback for you that I really think that you need to hear. So I think that's where I can come in and sit down with someone, and it's not in front of a team. It would just be one-on-one. I'm not going to leave the meeting and go tell my colleagues, hey, I just told the CEO that his last speech really sucked. Am I going to get fired, right? It's like so one-on-one that it's personal coaching. And I'm not afraid that I'm going to get fired from my corporate job, right? I take on clients. That's one of the good things about having a side business is that I can take on clients that I feel that I align with and that are open to that type of feedback.
Excellent.
Right. Yeah, this will be a great time to take our next break. You've been listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY. I'm Rick Sense along with Keith Keller this weekend, and we are talking with Bethany Skorik, who is the president of Ascent Etiquette and Communications, and we are having a very interesting conversation. And Bethany, you touched on it a little bit with some of your answers already, but I just want to kind of walk through. We haven't asked the specific question about you recently went through a name change for your organization. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And could you walk the listeners through that process, what you went through to get to that point?
Yes. So I went through a name change. It goes back to the biggest lesson learned that I have is don't back yourself into a corner and narrow down your niche so much that it prevents you from opening up to other clients. So when I first started, I really thought that this business was going to be my hobby and that I would go into schools and teach kindness, and I would go to tea parties and women's groups and teach lifestyle etiquette. And so I came up with the name, The Charming Diplomat, that I loved. I thought it was very sweet and quaint and perfectly described my hobby passion project. However, as I started to grow, myself being in business, I realized that that was not a very corporate sounding name. And when I was reaching out to businesses, I feared that they would not take me seriously, to be honest, if I was using that name that sounded so much like a hobby or almost a little bit too boutique. And so after a lot of contemplation, I decided to go through a brand change, and that's how I came up with Ascent Etiquette and Communications. And I still feel very good that it was the right decision, but there are some growing pains because for the first 2 years, I worked with several really famous publications like Southern Living, Better Homes and Gardens, Martha Stewart, The Knot, Business Insider, and I have a lot of articles out there that link back to my old website. So I was almost felt like I was not trapped, but I wanted to stay in that because of it. But I realized that I didn't want to always look back. I wanted to look forward. So I still have my old website. As we're speaking, in the middle of the rebrand. So that site still exists and it will link to my new site. But yeah, it was a lot of growing pains. And so don't niche yourself down. And I guess the second thing I learned is that don't build your business with blinders on. We all hear in the corporate world, move in the shadows, don't announce something until it's done. You don't want people to know you're working on something and then you decide not to do it and you become a failure or something. So I didn't talk to enough people when I was creating my business plan. And I think that if I would have been able to identify the gap that this could have grown into a more corporate business. But yes, so I went from the Charming Diplomat to Ascent Etiquette and Communications, and I feel excited about the change and the growth.
You know, you've mentioned before that you've worked with some clients already, and you mentioned the example of the CEO's speech that you took a look at. And I'm just wondering, when somebody comes to you, what kind of faux pas are they coming to you to fix?
So I have a signature program that I'm working with companies. This is not necessarily for the leaders. This is as I'm going into businesses. We tell, as I'm giving the shop, it's called Business Etiquette 101. But as I'm working with the company to prepare it, we really call it everything that HR wants to say, but they can't. And the reason we say that is because there's so many things going on in corporate world right now that should not be happening in the office, but it's not technically against an HR policy. So sometimes HR feels like their hands are tied because they can't tell an employee, you can't wear that, or you really need to take a shower or wear deodorant. Things like that can be really uncomfortable, especially for small businesses, to address things like that. So I come in and I really go over the whole scope from everything you need to do before you even get to work, soft skills, like coming to work on time. If your boss's name is Daniel, you can't call him D or like D-bomb unless he tells you that. Like, don't make up nicknames for people. I've been told, and I see this myself, that there's really that lack of formality in business. And we've all heard that when someone dresses in business or business casual, they have more confidence, they're more diligent in their work. Well, we have people showing up to work in crop tops and leggings and wearing Beats headphones, and all of those things are pretty inappropriate for most corporate settings. So I can be a person that comes in and yes, I tell them not to do these things, but I offer them kind of a more inspiring route. Like, if you level up how you're talking, how you're acting, how you're showing up, it's going to change the trajectory of your professional life. So doing that. And then there's a lot of things that leaders sometimes need to work on, but something that is surprising to me that comes up all the time is leaders should never talk about finances. And I witnessed myself some pretty cringeworthy scenarios where I think that leaders are trying to bond with their people or maybe trying to impress them, which a leader should never try to do. But talking about things like, my daughter just got her driver's license and I bought her a brand new car, or I love this charity, I just wrote a huge check to them and you guys should consider doing that as well. I bought my house and I paid too much, but I really wanted to be here. Saying things like that. On one hand, I think leaders think it humanizes them, but it really kind of causes resent, because the next time that your employee thinks that they're ready for a promotion or they deserve more money, maybe they don't, maybe they're not there, but in the back of their mind, they're thinking, okay, but my CEO can drop $20,000 on their favorite nonprofit and they're not giving me a few more dollars, right? So it kind of just sets you up in the future for people to hold that against you.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about communication. With the time we have left, communication is so important, and you don't even know where to begin and describing how important it is in today's world. Why is it so important for people to get communication right in the business setting, and what things do you do and offer to clients to help them do that?
There's so much in the nuance of communication that, from the words that you say to how you're delivering it, that can change entirely the meaning. And the whole point of communications is to get a point across. So you want to make sure that people are understanding the message that you're trying to give them. So one thing that I do, and when communications is very important, is when you're in the media. Training leaders before speaking to media, sitting them down and saying, what are the 3 things that you want the media to walk away with after this interview? They list out these 3 things. We practice. And then once the interview happens, I sit there with a pen and paper and I check how many times did that leader actually mention those 3 things. And then we talk about it after the interview. And I said, okay, you mentioned innovation 4 times. That's really good. You only mentioned your workforce once. So I doubt that that's even going to make it into the interview. And just doing that small practice, I think helps people reframe how they're showing up in other areas, from giving speeches to writing emails to just having meetings in the boardroom. You can have something in your mind, but unless you are really succinctly saying it and describing it, people probably aren't going to walk away understanding what you're trying to tell them.
Bethany, why are etiquette and communication skills so important to people that want to be thought leaders in the business community?
Etiquette plus good communications really, in my mind, equals influence. Because if you're not presenting your idea correctly, no one's going to listen. And you may walk in and be very charismatic and have everyone feeling open and ready. But if your message isn't there, then you're coming across as superficial. So you really can't have, in my opinion, one without the other. In a world that you can't put things on social media in just written word, really without photos or video at this point. So people are still seeing what you look like, how you interact. With media and discussion boards and surveys, people are able to share their ideas on how you present yourself in person. So that's why you really need that 360 approach to, I think, take off in thought leadership.
So how do you think social media should be used then, Bethany?
Social media should be used if a leader is using social media for credibility and not fame. And I say that because just putting up photos of yourself doing something or coming up with catchy captions, that's not going to get you where you want to go. It's going to come across kind of as superficial. So it's much better to post less, but have good content behind it. And follow a cadence. So you can't put out 3 things in 1 week and then go silent for 5 weeks. That throws off the algorithm, but it also shows that you're kind of not dependable or stable. So really having a cadence that you can stick to in social media is important. And if you do have Facebook or Instagram that you don't want tied to your business or your professional life, make sure that it's private. Make sure that you're approving everyone that you're adding as your friends and that you know everyone that's on there.
Are you having fun?
I'm having so much fun. I can't imagine that I was able to take a hobby that I love and grow it and nurture it over the last few years into something that has turned into a business. Every day when I'm either talking about communications or public speaking, or I still do manners and kindness training, I'll always do that. I'll always make time for that because I love it so much. That for me is just really heartwarming, and I like that I can bring a softer side to people's lives.
And what's next?
Let's finish the rebrand first. That's current. And I don't know, because it seems like every 6 months this business is growing in a way that I didn't anticipate. So I'm excited for what's next, and I'm excited for that next phone call that I might get of someone asking me, hey, have you thought about doing this? And then I'll say no, but that sounds awesome and I'd love to try it. Let's work together.
All right. I think this will be a great time to take our final break. You're listening to Biztalk with Score on WHBY, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY. I'm Rick Sense along with Keith Keller this morning and we are having this great conversation with Bethany Skorik. But before we continue that conversation with Bethany and her business, talking about her business, Ascent Etiquette and Communications, I would just like to take a moment to thank the sponsors and donors who bring Biz Talk with Score to you each weekend. We couldn't present Biz Talk without their generous support. Thank you to Haling & Associates. Haling & Associates helps small businesses and individuals not just prepare tax returns, but plan ahead, helping you minimize taxes for this year and beyond. Haling & Associates, personal connection, positive results. Thank you to Johnson Financial Group. Wherever you are in life or the life of your business, Johnson Financial Group works with you to understand your goals, matching the right banking and wealth services to help you complete your mission. Thanks to the Business News for promoting our program in the biweekly business newspaper serving Northeast Wisconsin. The paper is delivered biweekly and contains relevant and useful information about the business community in Northeast Wisconsin. We would also like to recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund within the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation in support of Biz Talk and Score Northeast Wisconsin. So Bethany, how can people get a hold of you and where can they go to learn more about what you're doing?
To learn more about what I'm doing, they can visit my website, Ascent Etiquette and Communications.com. They can also email me, Bethany at Ascent Etiquette and Communications.com. And they can find me on LinkedIn, Bethany Skorik, Skorik.
Excellent. Bethany, maybe just as kind of a closing thought, could you speak to the importance of etiquette, protocol, and personal branding in a world where communication seems to be increasingly coarse, shallow, and even mean?
Being kind and fair in your communications is going to make you stand out these days because everyone is trying to chase a soundbite or go viral or put something out that is going to cause debate. And being divisive may get a lot of comments on your posts, but you're going to turn a lot of people off that don't agree with you. And as a leader, you should really be trying to bring people together. You want to be seen as someone that is strong and stable versus divisive, causing conflict. So I always think that keep your personal opinions to yourself if you know that they're going to even step into the realm of politics right now. You will have 50% of the people disagree with you and probably unfollow you, and it's really hard to get back from that. It's like if you're a Packers fan and you find out someone is a Bears fan or cheers for the Vikings, it's like, okay, I don't have as much in common with that person as I thought that I did. And the same is the communications that you're putting out.
Excellent.
What would you tell listeners out there how to combat that? What do you do? How can you do your own social media in such a way to combat that's happening in our society today?
Stick to topics that you want to be known for. So if you want to be known for innovation or leadership or workforce, that can be your overarching pillar. And then there's so much that you can share on those things. It doesn't have to say innovation, my idea of innovation today. You can share articles that support that. You can talk about cool things that are happening in workforce development. There's a lot of room to add creativity into your topics. And it doesn't always have to be a really long article that you're posting. It could be an article that you find interesting or a picture of something that you want to put a thoughtful caption on. So social media doesn't really have to be intimidating or taking a long time. And I always say a rule of thumb is if you're nervous to hit post, if you think, is this divisive? Is this not going to come across correctly? I would just delete it and come back to it later.
In our last minute, Bethany, what's the one thing that you've seen that you feel has become such a problem in social media that just you don't know how we can fix it? And do you have any ideas quickly how to fix that?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question. So again, I think in social media, people chasing fame through social media, it comes across as very weak. And if you have your idea of a leader or someone on your team and you look at their social media and it's them taking pictures of things that they bought, or maybe they take a picture of their dinner because it's beautiful or they really like it, but if it comes across in the sense that they're trying to brag, it just makes you think, well, they must not have self-confidence if they think that we're going to be impressed by this. So if I could change something about social media, it would be that people are a little bit more real in it and they show what their real life is and they stop trying to impress people through their experiences.
All right. Great advice, Bethany, and we appreciate you coming on the program this morning. Listeners, you've been listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and have a great rest of the weekend.